Lesson 20, Graphing on a Coordinate Plane. A coordinate plane is made up of two perpendicular lines, which we must remember means that those two lines meet at a right angle or 90 degrees. Each point on the coordinate plane is an ordered pair, that's what we call it, and it is always in the order of x and then y. You can remember this because x comes first in the alphabet before y, so it is always x and then y. We always use this order to graph points. We go the x coordinate first, so we always start at the origin, which is right here where those two, right here where those two lines meet. Okay, we always go the x first, which is along the x-axis, and then from the point that we move for the y. Okay. Other things that you need to know about the coordinate plane is that this is the first first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. It says to graph and label each ordered pair on a coordinate plane. Remember, we just talked about that every ordered pair is labeled x. My pen is really having a hard time this morning. X, and then y. I do not know what's wrong. Okay, so this is y. Alright, so what we're going to do is we always start at the origin and we go the x distance first. Well, x is 2 and it's a positive 2, so we go to the right 2 times. From this location, we move the y. And the y is positive 3, so we go up 1, 2, 3 times. Okay, now when they tell you to label it, you can label it a couple of different ways. Because they didn't give you a specific point that this is, we will label it by using the ordered pair. I'm having to use my mouse to do this, so it's going to be ugly. So we would say that this is point 2, 3. On B, same exact thing. We start at the origin. The x is 0, which means we don't move to the left or right at all. We stay right at the origin, and from there we're going to go down 5 because it's negative 5 for y. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and we will label this point as they tell us to, which is 0, negative 5. Okay. When there is a relationship between two variable quantities, one variable is independent and the other variable is dependent. The independent value can be chosen, that is the input, and we've already talked about input and output a little bit, I think, and what we need to remember is that input or the independent variable is always, I would love for my pen to work, but it's just not going to happen for me this morning, is always x, and my dependent, which is the output variable, and that's determined by the input, which you should know that whenever we're substituting in with x and y, we always substitute in for x and solve for y, so that makes y our dependent variable. Wow, I'm really glad I'm not solving equations right now because it would be a disaster. So it says to identify the independent and dependent variables. I want you to pause at this point, read through them, and see which thing you think depends on the other one. Okay, that's usually the best way for me to figure them out myself. So go ahead and pause. On A, the distance traveled and the amount of gas used. Okay, so does the distance you traveled depend on the amount of gas that you use? Or does the amount of gas that you use depend on the distance that you've traveled? I hope that you're thinking that the amount of gas that you use depends on the distance that you travel, which would make the amount of gas the dependent, and the distance that you travel, oh shoot, did I say that right? Yeah. And the distance that you travel, the independent. On B, the water bill and the gallons of water used. Does the water bill depend on the gallons of water used, or does the gallons of water used depend on the water bill? Well, let's think about this. At home, when you get your water bill, I'm sure that it fluctuates every month because it depends on how much water is used. They don't say, okay, this month your water bill is going to be $100, so you're allowed to use this many gallons of water. That's not the way that it works. The water bill depends on the gallons of water that you use each month. Okay? So it says to complete the table for this equation. The tables, for some reason, do not save well in this document. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a t-chart here. T-chart always has x and y. Our x is always on the left-hand side of a t-chart because that's our input. We're going to choose numbers for this and plug them in here. So whenever I choose numbers, I always like to choose a negative, 0 and a positive so I can see what happens with negative and positive numbers. So we're going to choose -2, 0, and 2. So if I plug in -2 for x, which is what it wants me to do, I hope my pen works here. So I have that y equals 4, and instead of x, I'm going to put that -2. Remember, when we substitute for a variable, we always use parentheses. So I have 4 times -2 first because multiplication comes before addition. So I'm going to multiply these two. 4 times -2 is a -8. Bring down everything that I haven't used. -8 plus 2, that's going to give me a -6, which is what y is equal to whenever x is -2. I want you to go ahead and pause and find the output values for 0 and 2. Okay, whenever you plug in these two things, you should have found that whenever x is 0, y is 2. And that when x is 2, y is 10. If you did not find those things, find those numbers, look back and see what you could have done wrong, and if you can't figure it out, please come and ask me tomorrow in class. Final example here. A friend's allowance wages are about $15 per day. His allowance payment from his parents is dependent on him completing all of his given chores for the day. The total allowance can be calculated using this equation, which is y equals 15x. Find the pay when he works 5, 7, 10, and 12 days. So essentially what we're doing here is we are creating a t-chart where x, okay, it says find the pay when he works 5, 7, 10, and 12 days. He's getting paid $15 a day. So x is representing days. So we're going to plug in 5, 7, 10, and 12. Okay, so all we have to do is say y equals 15, and instead of x, we're going to put that first value, which is 5. So all I'm doing here is multiplying, and I have 15 times 5, which is going to give me 75. So he will get paid $75 if he works 5 days. I want you to go ahead and finish the rest of these out on your own paper, please. Plug in, solve for y, and make sure you've taken good notes, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.